Well, here we go. Hello, Jeff. Glad to see you again. And Leslie, good to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Gary. Thanks for having us on.
Oh, you are quite welcome. I was just so intrigued about do-over. And so it really fits in with our audience because we talk about aging and generational issues in past podcasts that we've done. And later on today, I'm doing one on erotic self-awareness for older individuals with ladies. So it'll be kind of cool to do that. So it gives us a little different perspective on that. Well, great. And Leslie, where are you located?
I'm sort of back and forth. I have been located in Los Angeles, but now my daughter is grown. I'm actually right now in the middle of Alabama in a house my grandparents built that I love.
How cool is that?
So I know. I spend as much time here as I can.
Well, great. I grew up in Texas, so I know the southern feel there. And Jeff, I forgot, where did you grow up at?
Corpus Christi, Texas.
Oh, yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
Just a little different up in the Panhandle where I grew up on a ranch and you grew up by the ocean. So,
Oh, that sounds like the best. Do you go back? Do you ever go back?
I do every once in a while. We left Texas back 30 plus years ago when Ann Richardson was still governor.
Oh, yeah.
And so we left it in good hands, but currently it's not in good hands. To do that. Okay.
I'm going to just prop myself this here. Okay.
Okay. We're making one change there with my name. So that's good. Okay. So what'll happen on this when we do two types of productions? Dan is the audio person and he does all the editing and everything that we need to do with that. Aaron, on the other hand, does the editing for the YouTube channel, YouTube. And so you guys will get to see them first after the edits and look at it. And if there's anything that needs to be edited out or changed, you would let us know. And then Aaron will also produce a packet of publicity stuff for you to promote the specific episode that we're doing. This will probably be done in November or December, 1st of December. We have it scheduled for that time period. Okay. So that'll be good.
And so we'll be able to help promote it, put it even on our website or everything.
Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We want you to promote yourselves and your production company and do all that. So yeah. Thanks. Well, great. I appreciate you doing it. So we'll get started. And let me see, Leslie, it is Hardy, correct? That's the pronunciation on that. Okay.
Hardy.
Because coming from Texas, sometimes I have a different pronunciation on that. So,
what would you say?
Hardy, but sometimes it's got a different thing. I have a friend that's called Francois, but where he grew up, it's frankincense or something else like that. So each person has their own spelling and pronunciation.
Hardy.
Hardy. Whatever. As long as you get the name of our film right and our production company, then that's all I care about.
And it's Third Act, correct? Production company. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Well, great. And thank you for the clarifications. I've incorporated them into the material. So we'll get started. Thank you. This is Gary Beagle with Bourbon with Beagle, a talk on the rocks. And today we're very excited to have with us Leslie Hardy and Jeff Wylie, who are unique individuals that have a varied background. But we're going to talk today about incorporating production into film that speak about older individuals and how they manage to find love. It's a woman's story, I understand, Leslie, that you helped write. So I always go through and ask two questions of my guest. And so the first question is, what generation are you with? So Leslie.
I would say, I saw that. I guess technically I'm the tail end of the baby boomers. I was born in 1963, but so often my life, raising a child or, different parts of life, I felt like I aligned a little bit more with what is it right after that? The Gen X?
Gen X.
Yeah. So I'm one of those, just sort of right on the cusp between baby boomer and Gen X.
And I did a series on generations and talked to each one of the generations, and the X individual is right on the high end of the X and below the boomers. And they're having the same issue I think you are, which is we don't identify with the boomers, the older ones, because it's such a wide age difference. And we have a different perspective. And I always said it should have been another generation in between there that identifies us. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeff, what generation are you?
Well, the same. I was born in 62, but even growing up in my early 20s, when boomers became a big thing, I was constantly every day just going, that's not me at all. I am not anywhere in that generation. And also with Generation X, I was kind of a loner as a kid, really. So I devoured pop culture, but I was just kind of nebulous as to where I fit in until I got older. So
true. And I think the boomers have defined a group of individuals and a generation, but it's not the correct identification for individuals in our age groups. So do that. Appreciate that. Do you, Leslie, have a personal philosophy on aging?
I read that question of yours, Gary. It would be lean in as much as you can. Lean in. I mean, I think after working for years as an actor in Los Angeles, and even then when I started writing a little over 10 years ago, I heard a writer I respect a lot say, "Oh, and I'm not getting any younger." And I realized ageism crosses the lines from acting to writing to directing. And I just think that's a hard way to live. In whatever realm you're in, is fighting something, pushing back against something. So I don't know, I think we all have those moments when we're like, oh my gosh, am I going to say my age? Or, oh, if you're, starting to date someone, or you're putting yourself out there, or it catches you by surprise. But I really try to go against that and just embrace. I don't know, what else can one do, but embrace and be grateful for the days of getting older. Really, when there's so many of us that are not making it out of their 50s, cancers, ubiquitous, and so really to try to turn that around and find the joy and be really grateful for every day.
Yeah, great. And lean to is a new word that I have not heard in this discussion. So I appreciate you sharing that. So lean to means to embrace the aging process, if I'm understanding correctly, and to be a little rebel-ish in this.
Why not? Yeah, and I like lean to, but I actually said lean into, which I think is something.
Okay.
Yes, that.
Thank you for clarifying that.
The Facebook person wrote, I can't remember her name at the moment, but about leaning into whatever it is that and that's very much of a. Jeffrey and I share a sort of a Buddhist. He's much more grounded in it than I am, but there is that like turning around and walking into what scares you. So it is the lean into.
Okay. Well, that's great, and thank you for using the term lean into, because I haven't heard that before, and it's a great philosophy. So that's wonderful. Thank you, Jeff. Do you have a personal philosophy on aging as well?
Oh yes, and it's akin to what Leslie just said for leaning into. Mine comes from my mom, who's 92, still lives alone, still drives, has all her faculties, and her entire life, and you would think she's 20 years younger than she is. Every morning when we wake up, we make the decision to be happy. No matter what's going on in life, there's always problems in life. Even if you're going through great grief, great trouble at work, anything, we make the choice to be happy. And the reason, aside from good genetics in our family, I think she's still so vibrant at 92 because of living from her heart and just choosing to be happy. You know what? And it's more than being optimistic.
Right.
Optimistic is like, oh, I hope things will work out and things will be fine. Because even when things aren't fine, we can still choose to just live with it and be at peace with it.
Right.
So.
Right. And I share, my mom's 92 as well.
Oh, wow.
Very independent, very active in doing things, and she's a cleaner, so she loves to clean her little apartment and do all that good stuff. But she has the mentality too, I think, of being a survivor. And in being a survivor is that you have that positive outlook and attitude to do that. So, Leslie, do you have anyone that is older that you would admire that has this spirit that we're talking about, the 92-year-old moms?
No, not at the moment.
Okay.
They're not with me anymore.
Oh, that's too sad. That's sad. Well,
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I've seen people that are in their 90s that act like they're in their 60s, and I have clients that are 60 that act like they're in their 90s. So I really can't tell age anymore. It's just a mindset, I think, is the key here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It is a mindset. It is so much of life is in one's perception. And it is a mindset. And just what you said, you can find young people, 20s, 30s, who just a hardened or a bitter or a cynicism, things that to me feel old. And you can find, people 70s, 80s, 90s. My grandmother was almost 101 when she left us. And then joy, just, joy in whatever it is, simple things, cleaning, whatever it is you enjoy.
Exactly. So how has your personal journey evolved to bring you to this place today? Leslie, how has that happened?
What place am I in today? I don't know what place that is.
So where would you consider yourself to be today?
That's interesting. I was having this conversation with my daughter who's in her 20s, and she was questioning, she lives in New York, and she was questioning her work and if she was living to her full potential. And we were having this conversation as a person in her 50s, a young woman in her 20s. And to answer your question, I feel like I am finally living to my potential, bumping up against what I am able to do in writing, directing, producing. It stretches me. It kind of scares me because I don't, do you know what I mean? It's like bumping up against if I can do something.
Right.
And so that's exciting. What brought me here, the last 3 decades, the last however many decades of life. Yeah.
So I think it's expanding those boundaries that you were talking about and putting yourself out there to do that. We just had an interview with a gentleman who does storytelling and reflecting on people's stories, that where they're at, and helping them to realize some things in their lives. And I think that's always good for all of us. But the broadening of the horizons seems to be a lost art sometimes, I think, because I see that very much so with other individuals. Do you see others doing what you're doing or less, Leslie?
Doing what I'm doing
which is putting yourself out there, pushing the boundaries, putting yourself into places where I
can fail, and I saw this. I don't know. I think I do because where I met Jeffrey through our theater company in Los Angeles, a new play development company, I think that we were surrounded by, and it was writer centric. So as a writer, it was a constant source of place to go up and set yourself up for failure and to try to broaden. And if you're going to broaden your horizons, or you are going to fall flat at times. Right. I don't think you can get there without falling flat, failing. So in the creative realm, I think Jeffrey and we see that a lot. In a more traditional line of work, I don't know. I see a lot of fear. I mean, I even saw some of that, from my mother of, I hope it works out for you. I think it's hard for people when you care about someone to see them putting a lot of effort into something, even if it brings them a lot of joy, without wanting it to work out well. Right. And I think you have to be willing for things to not work out well in the moment, and then you keep going to the next moment.
Right.
You know, so you have to be willing to fail, to succeed. Yeah. We've all heard that. But does that make any sense? You have to be willing to put yourself out there. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think, does your daughter have the fear of going out and doing these things, that generation, do you think?
She has a fear, which I think is amazing, which I certainly feel now. She said, I feel like, she's 27. I feel like time is passing.
Oh.
And so that's, Gary, maybe another subject for you, another group to enter.
Absolutely.
And that was something. I was played too loosely with time in my 20s, way into my 30s. Just, that's the beauty of getting older, is that you realize, oh, time is precious, and how am I going to spend it? So yeah, I think it was, for her, it was just a time is passing, and she's at that time when, I think there was a New Yorker spoof on this of, hang on as long as you can and then go to grad school, where a lot of people not knowing what they're going to do next. And so, I'll go back to school. I'll go to grad school.
Yeah.
So just, questioning, existential questions. And
what an insight, though. I would have not have thought about that. I would, speaking of an older individual, yes, but what an insight. And she was able to share that with you. That's good. Yeah. Great. So Jeff, or do you go by Jeff or Jeffrey?
Jeffrey, usually.
Okay. I met you as Jeff, I think, but
Jeffrey.
Jeffrey. So I will go back and change Jeffrey on all of this.
It's all right.
To do that. No, I want to be correct on that. I should have asked. I apologize.
Although, no, Gary, on the set of Do Over, our wonderful cinematographer, Ileana Ipes, she called Jeffrey, you answered to Jeff.
Yeah.
She called you Jeff throughout. Yes.
In that scenario, she was the boss. I let her,
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. So I always ask this relating to it as well. How did a young man from Corpus Christi end up on this path to LA and all the things you've done?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part of that. It dropped out.
I'm sorry. How did a young man from Corpus Christi, Texas, the same as I am from Amarillo area, but how did you come to LA and have this wonderful experiences that I've seen that you do? How did that happen?
With no real design at the time, kind of like what Leslie said about even through my 20s, just being haphazard in a way. And I'm very ADD in many ways. And that affected me a great deal out of high school, through college, through my 20s and 30s. I've been on stage since I was 8 years old, and I've always knew I wanted to be a performer, a director, and eventually made my way to the film department at Columbia College in Chicago after a few years in and out of school in Texas. And then it was time to leave Chicago, and I moved out here to LA in the fall of '88. And it's interesting for me because part of the question you'd asked was our personal journey and how did it get us to where we are now. For all of my desires and as creative as I always wanted to be, I was always just distracted. I've always worked in nightclubs and restaurants, used to own my own restaurant. So that was always the bulk of my work. And over 3 decades in LA, I just was able to keep scratching my itch of doing theater work and production work, doing camera and directing short films and web series and such. So, part of like getting back to the question of as to how the journey led to where we are now, I had been at a job for 24 years in LA, managing a big gay dance club on the East Side. And after maybe it was COVID, partly just also getting, 58, 59 years old, I realized I want to finally try to pursue my career like I never did, my production and theater career. Yeah. And Leslie was just such a great inspiration because she's such an amazing writer. And we're kind of like, you know what, let's just do this. And she called up and said, let's do something. And I said, yes.
I thought you called me and said, let's do something. And I said, yes.
Well, maybe that was, I know I was thinking about it a long time.
And then we were talking about Jane Fonda, and then that's a whole other story, how
That's
we
a whole
came
other
up with
story.
Third Act Productions.
Yes. So
Okay.
it was just, we were very copacetic in what we wanted to pursue. And I mean, for me, I'll be 60 in December. And, I feel like I'm 18 again.
Sure.
In that, the world is our oyster, and I'm just out of school, but I'm not the snot-nosed idiot kid that I was, self-loathing, self-hating, gay, repressed kid that I was at 18, which,
Sure.
had colored all of my teenage years since I was about 10 or 11 and into my early 20s until I finally came out.
Yeah.
Where was I going with this? So all of that, once I did come out, and it really set me on a journey to learning to be happy and learning to love myself.
Right.
And I feel great about everything now. It's a joy. It's like getting able to relive it again,
Well, good.
leaving school and getting out in the world. So,
Well, I just talked to somebody today where they were saying, if it doesn't bring me joy, I'm not going to be doing this. And that's been their philosophy for a while. And I went, that's very true. We all should be saying, if it doesn't bring me joy, then this maybe isn't the right direction for us to go to. So
follow your heart.
Kind of insightful for me.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have a company or a Third Act, and tell me a little bit about, you alluded to how you guys kind of came together, but what is Third Act and how has it blossomed and taken hold with you? And Leslie, you want to start off?
I'll go first. When I started writing, then I submitted and was accepted into a group called Fierce Backbone in Los Angeles, and they were writers centric. They really didn't even call themselves a theater company. They said they were a new play development company, which sounds to some sort of like an oxymoron in Los Angeles, the new play development company. But I like saying it proudly, because even after working as an actor in Los Angeles for years, I've never been more impressed at the commitment of the actors that I found. And I never did much theater as an actor. I was so impressed with the actors I found in Los Angeles, willing to give of their time to help writers, rewrite and explore their work without any gain other than the love of it and the love of practicing their craft. So it was this sort of eye-opening as I was transitioning, getting very disillusioned. I've been doing a lot of just very mediocre television stuff in Los Angeles and little guest spots on things and tons of commercials and just not really getting where I wanted to be creatively. And that's when I started writing. And it's interesting, I've had those conversations with other sort of middle-class actors, who you're in that sort of it's kind of a dangerous area where you're making a living, such as it is. You're not getting no work, you're getting work, but you're not bumping into a place where you can really do things that are creatively fulfilling and empowering. So that's when I started writing, got into Fierce Backbone, and that's where I met Jeffrey. And this was sort of, I don't know if you guys have had this, a little bit, the beginner's luck, they say, that's the universe's way of telling you keep going. Keep going. I had that when I started acting. I had it when I started writing. And it was a play that I had written called A Good Grief. And Jeffrey was, I don't know if they had to bribe you, threaten you. I don't know how you got coerced into directing A Good Grief.
Oh, you don't know? No, I fought to direct it. I fought to direct that play. Yeah. I was like, I'm directing this. I have to direct this. So I really pushed for that. I didn't know you didn't know that. Yeah.
No. And Gary, one of the things about this, that for Third Act Productions, this isn't Jeffrey and we can certainly butt heads. He's like the brother I never had. And but I think we both have such an admiration for each other's work and creative eye and what the other one brings to it. And Jeffrey, thank you for fighting to direct that. It went back to the beginner's luck. It was one of the first full-length plays that I had written, and Fierce Backbone wanted to produce it. Jeffrey directed it. That was back in 2013. Wow. So years, come and go. There were other things. There was another play I wrote called Red Dirt Town that was optioned by someone in the Hollywood world. and has since fallen out of option. But Jeffrey spoke up right away, and it's set in the small town in Alabama. And Jeffrey is one of the ones who was like, I love this story. I love this story. If it ever comes in. And so there were these things that kept, I was like, oh, I think Jeffrey kind of likes my work. He likes what I'm writing. Jeffrey, go ahead. Go ahead.
Quick anecdote to that. What was it? It was before COVID. It was 2017, correct? Or 2018?
2019, there was that reading?
Well, no, because Fierce Backbone had also voted to do Red Dirt Town as our fall production. And on one Monday night, we met every Monday night. And the next Monday, Leslie comes in and says, guys, I'm really sorry. I didn't mention this last week because you just never know. But the play was just optioned, so we can't do it this fall. And I was devastated because I wanted to direct the play. And yeah, it's an amazing play. And then she eventually developed it into a screenplay, which just is even more incredible, the way it opened up the story for her, or her storytelling. And that's then kind of what led us to this, just saying, yeah, let's do this ourselves. Actually, Leslie, I think it was the week or two after the option expired, the production company just let it fall away. And she called me and said, let's just do it ourselves. And I'm like, you're right. We're not getting any younger. Let's do this.
Absolutely.
That is a big thing about aging too, coupled with having worked for years as an actress in Los Angeles, where I came from stay in your lane. I had this conversation with an actress friend of mine, stay in your lane, read your line, work hard, go do your best on the audition and hope someone will hand you the job. Sorry. Forget that.
Yeah.
So I think that was a huge part of this, and Jeffrey and us, like, let's do our own things. We'll need to start with shorts. Those are within our budget, learn the craft, get this down. But it was not wanting to wait anymore for someone to say, okay, you can go and do that. Yeah.
So you push and this is my own words, push the boundaries to open up your abilities to do this on your own. So, yeah.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Leslie, I'm very interested in, do you have a common theme when you do when you're writing plays? How do you come up with the creative idea, I guess, being a entertainer actor? I don't know whether I'm using the right words there, but how do you come up with a creative
ideas
spark that creates a play?
Well, yeah, and it's interesting, sort of without making a conscious decision, I've sort of turned more for the screen now. I think it started during the pandemic, and also realizing it was so competitive in the theater world. But then when the pandemic and a lot of small theaters were, just really shuttering and just having a bumpy road through that, it made me, coupled with my conversations with Jeffrey, and I thought, well, let me start adapting some of these things for the screen, and or just writing newly for the screen. But to answer your question about the story, where did it from? Everywhere. Really? Quite a bit is inspired by the area where I am now, this little town in the middle of Alabama, right between Birmingham and Montgomery, where I grew up visiting my grandparents and now get to spend most of my time. And it's not a coincidence that in the time that I've been here, Jeffrey and I have formed our production company, filmed 2 shorts, several more lined up. This feels right to me. It's a space where I can breathe. Right. Or as I said to one of our actors in Do Over, I said I was able to get out from under the thumb of Los Angeles, which felt empowering to me. Right. But inspired by the South, inspired by race, inspired by the people around me. I love it when I go to the Piggly Wiggly or the Unique Barbecue and I can wait and listen to how people, I love how people speak. Right. I just love that. It's an art, how people speak. I'm inspired by, and again, a beautiful thing about getting older, I'm inspired by women and their stories and their resilience, whether it's the, female character in Do Over, all of a sudden getting to a point in life and looking back and going, oh shit, oh my gosh, can I, and what do you do with that? Does it freeze you? do you start anew?
Yeah.
And I had that with my writing again a little over 10 years ago, where a director friend of mine said, get yourself in a writing class, start writing. And I was looking through something, and an old journal that I had written, and I had this real moment. I don't know if you guys have had that, of like fear of, oh my gosh, my life is going by and I'm not doing something I was meant to do.
Yeah.
Have you had that? Have you all had that? It was this, it stopped me in my tracks. That was frightening.
Yeah.
So anyway, so those things, women at certain times grappling with things, that inspires me.
Right. Well, I had this similar thing. That's the reason why I started the podcast and the YouTube, was because I'd been wanting to do this for a long time. And it dawned on me, if you don't do it now, you will not get it done. And I found that the people that I chat with and have as guests are also interesting and have very different takes on life. Some are similar, but unique in that respect. But Jeffrey, you write as well. Is that correct?
I can. Writing is fifth or sixth in my wheelhouse, I think.
Okay.
I have written some in the past, a screenplay with a writing partner, an old friend of mine who was also a playwright. That was years ago. And I have a stage show that I wrote that I was supposed to start doing in 2020. So I put that off until next year.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I get, like Leslie was saying, I've been inspired by the people in my life and situations that have happened to me. That's one great thing that I love about taking real life experiences and translating them into a completely different storyline, plot, whatever, so that even people that are close to you in your life, don't see your life experiences and past in that work.
Right.
Like it's a 90-minute piece I wrote, a one-woman show. She's not a drag queen, she's a real woman from South Texas, and along the lines of Greater Tuna, if people know that.
Absolutely.
But the 3-4 major points in this arc, it's about bullying and gay teen suicide, and it's a musical comedy. That things were inspired by things that happened to me in my life. Oh. And people, I shouldn't be saying this maybe publicly, but even a lot of friends after seeing the show just had no clue that they were things taken directly from my life, but just couched in a way and a new story and set of circumstances that didn't reflect on the original. But that what I found is the emotional impact and emotional heart and integrity of the story translate, and that's what people grasp onto. So,
yeah, you and I've chatted before, and you are a performer. You've done directing, cinematography, and visual storytelling. So, what out of that is your? I use the word favorite, but which one of those is your passion? Which do you enjoy the best?
Well, because I think of this as I mentioned wheelhouse before, like it's my wheelhouse of fun for what I enjoy doing. I mean, as much as I love performing on the stage too, I don't really act for camera or haven't before. As much as I love stage performing, the most fun thing for me is directing for either stage or screen, followed by camera work. Because I love the visuals and have an eye for that. I think just because I absorbed so much media when I was young, because I was a loner kid, and after that, producing, because it's just all part of that, body of work. Then comes performing, and then would be writing. So
the wheelhouse concept is new to me, because I'm in the business world and the banking and social work aspect. We don't have that line of thinking of like we have a wheelhouse and we have different spokes, I guess would be the right word, of different things in our lives that make up that wheelhouse. But you do, and that's really great.
Well, I actually think the concept could be applied to anyone, not just creatives, but even for any individual in your life. What as you were asking, what do you find the most joy in,
Right.
and what you do? And then, you can kind of rate stuff. Not that you don't like the stuff that's fifth or sixth, you still love it and love doing it. But there's just, I'd rather be, So.
Well, it was an eye opener for me because I never look at that concept for myself. But after looking at it, it's like, oh, I could do that. I could take and do a will house myself, just like you have. I could do a will house just like you have done with my talents. And so that was very eye opening for me. Cool. So thank you for sharing that.
What would yours be?
Do you know that mine would be along the lines of doing this? I love the interviewing process, would be my passion that I do on that. And I enjoy that a lot. I do some writing and I enjoy that. But then I'm very good on the business side and I enjoy figuring out things and making things work within those environments, such as business. And then aging folks are my passion. I love aging folks. I've always been an advocate for them in doing that. And so I have a little social justice wing to me. So if I feel somebody's getting taken advantage of, then I just go, ooh, we cannot do this. So that's part of my makeup, is that social justice portion of it. But that's true. Yeah.
Were you interested in aging and aging people even when you were not in that category? And where did that come from?
Well, it is. Jeffrey will relate to this. I grew up Southern Baptist back in the day. And so I was attended the Baptist Student Union at West Texas State, which is where I went to get my undergrad work. And I became a Baptist Student Union missionary for the summer at Buckner True Home for the Aging in Dallas. And that's where it came from. And I must have been about 19, I think, at that age. And I realized I kind of relate to these folks from my background. And so we don't want to have people languishing in nursing homes and things. So that's where it kind of sprang from, Leslie, was that back in that day.
And what did you find, just my last question, but what did you find as the common ground as a 19-year-old? And were you assigned that, or did you choose that? You were assigned it.
Yes.
Isn't that amazing how that worked? And then it ended up being this, that's been such you've had such feeling around for your life, and you were just assigned that. But what was the common ground?
The common ground had to be with, again, being an only surviving child and growing up as a loner kind of myself and being around older people all the time. I think I felt a natural affinity to that group. And also growing up in small communities in Oklahoma, Texas area, those individuals had to depend on themselves a lot, like your grandmother at 101 in small Alabama. And their viewpoints were totally different in retrospect of what we have today. But again, they were independent women back in those days and really, survived in some very tough situations. So I think the common ground has to be that they were able to tell their stories. And then my social justice came up. And so I had relatives, aunts and uncles that were in nursing homes and things, and that's not the place where you need to be. So there has to be options out there. I have my bachelor's is in social work, but back in the day, they didn't pay anything. So I was in banking, making more in banking as a teller, part-time teller. And so that started the financial side. So it kind of blends both my talents together. Yeah.
Interesting. Thanks.
It is. So in your wheelhouse, is that the correct term, Jeffrey? Wheelhouse?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's okay. Good. I want to do that. And yes, sir, you can tell you're from Texas. I'm doing that because that's the formal. My mother still says, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. And they're all going, what is this? But yeah, truly Southern. But Leslie, what's in your wheelhouse? You've acted, you've written. Have you done directing as well?
Well, I co-directed Do Over.
Okay.
Yes, it would be for mine writing, and now I would say directing, producing, and acting way down there.
Yeah.
Acting was, yeah, it was fine. I mean, it was, what I love about it now, what was so exciting to me is that I directed a short called Mom's Day that Jeffrey and I, that was the first short we did before Do Over. And then Jeffrey and I co-directed Do Over. And what I loved, it was like all of those years as an actor. And again, I was mainly, TV, small film, mainly in front of a camera. So I loved directing actors for the camera. And I also love paintings, and I loved and framing, the composition, the lighting. I was sort of like, oh, this is what I can do. Yeah. This is what I can do. So it was several loves of mine, whether it's art, again, that composition, the lighting, and the knowing how to talking to the actors and figuring out how to talk to each of our actors. And how do you talk to people that have so much experience and learn from them at the same time. So sure. I just loved the delicate dance of directing, and was grateful to have Jeffrey by my side. Yeah.
Well, I'll jump in. I was just grateful to have Leslie's script and to have her there, because, I don't want to embarrass Leslie, but the first screenplay she wrote that when she turned Red Dirt Town, the play, into a screenplay, I think I called you up and I was like, you've never written a screenplay before? Because she just nailed it. And I was telling her then, she has such a natural eye and ear for not just writing, but directing. And I mean, I love working with her, and that we have her words and stories to tell is that's a blessing. I mean, I'm very excited about what's the future holds. So,
well, absolutely. And you guys are very passionate about it, which I love, about the new phase of life, or where you're at now and what the possibilities are. And most people don't have that. I hope you understand that and realize that that's pretty unique, because the people that I deal with aren't looking in the future very much. They're either in the past and they're not in the present. So that's really refreshing for me to see that from you guys. So thank you for doing that. So you have a new short out that you have. It's called Do Over. So Leslie, tell me a little bit about Do Over.
Do Over is the story of a woman, as we were saying, who has gotten to a certain point in life and is looking back on the last several decades with some regret. And she decides she's going to do something about that. And so she revisits one of her regrets to try to do things differently, to try to do them over.
Okay.
And it's a two-hander. It's again, it's interesting when you're writing and you're producing. It's like, okay, the producer hat is like you as a finance person. Okay, two characters, great. Let's keep them all inside the house. Great. no need, up and down the sidewalk. Skip the car scene. No, she could just show up right on the doorstep. So it's this funny thing of which I don't mind. It was very contained. Let's put it that way. So luckily we had amazing actors.
Yeah. And Jeffrey, you had we talked about Do Over. Undo's my term for undoing myself. But anyway, Do Over. And it was a great concept and story, but how did you get co-write? How did the co-writing work?
I did not co-write. No,
right. You wrote, Leslie. Then Leslie wrote. I totally misunderstood. Yeah. I apologize.
That's okay.
Leslie's got all the talent when it comes to writing. Jeffrey does not. So that's what it says.
I wouldn't go that far.
Well, I'm good at story development and edit and things like that, but I can't. Leslie can sit down and write, I think, 20 pages one day, and the next morning get up and throw them out, say, no, that's not right, and redo them.
Yeah.
That's so rare for writers.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Just redo their work and not be so touchy about it.
Yeah. Attached to it. There's no attachment.
Yes. Excuse me. That's
absolutely.
Sorry.
So, Jeffrey, how does the directing how, being a non-entertainment person onto it, explain a little bit of how directing comes about and what you look for and what you do, especially with short films such as Do Over.
Well, there are many similarities on one level between directing for the stage and directing, at least initially in my mind, for camera, because you have to be able to, when you read the script, obviously see it in your head and be gripped by what's going on and the emotions and the characters, and whether it's a comedy or a drama. So for me, it's about seeing it, just really being able to visualize it. Now with stage, obviously you've got weeks and weeks to deal with actors, and that's just the most wonderful thing in the world. Screen, you usually don't. We were very lucky that we had 2 days with the actors to work with them. So moving specifically into film, for me, directing is, no matter how big of a crew you have, right? It all comes down to what's right in front of that camera when the camera is on, and what are you capturing. So the goal is to ensure that everything is focused in on that, and to, take after take, capture as many different, let the actors play, capture as many different takes as you can, time permitting, because really it's, the film is made in the editing, obviously, but as far as on-set directing, just keep everyone focused and upbeat and loving what we're doing. Especially, it's just about creating the space for the actors and our DP, Ileana, and everyone else to do their thing.
Okay.
I see directing as being like the traffic cop. In a way, yes, we have our vision and we know what we need to see and work with the different departments to try to create something. But it's all, if you just let people do, if you get everyone on the same page to start, and then let them go off and do what they will with it, you're always going to come up with anything better, than you could have thought of yourself. That's how it's always been for me.
And from a non-entertainment, DP means what?
A director of photography, cinematographer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Leslie, how do you approach the directing aspect? Do you do similarly, or is it a little different? Or
Gary, I am so new at directing. I don't even know what my process is, other than, I had said it was just interesting. It just felt like a familiar shoe,
right?
Even though I had never worn that shoe before. But
you had both of you have been in actors, writing scripts, all of that. So that probably helped, didn't it? Bringing to do that.
Well, it did. I mean, it made me wish again that I had paid more attention all the sets I was on.
Right.
I have been on those sets in front of the camera, and it's so many times. I mean, it's amazing how much, just a bread and butter actor, you just so many times on those sets. So you do sort of have a sense of what's going on.
Right.
In this case, no. I was just going to say, as far as an approach, it's really, there's just a lot of prep work that goes into it ahead of time. And then every case, I'm excited to find out more. These actors were so experienced. I had said to my daughter, I was like, the best thing I can do is just stay out of their way.
Right.
And that was true to a point. And then there are little things that you tweak here and there.
So coming from an actor's background, is it easier, do you think, to communicate with your actors on set?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
In fact, I said something to Melanie Hutzel, our female character. I said, she was like, she was nervous about the last day. It was sort of a pivotal, moment. And she said, oh, this is the big day. And I said, don't even worry about it. Don't even call it in. She's like, I can't call it in. I said, don't even. And whether that was the right thing to say or not, but I was trying to say, no pressure. Right. Just show up, just be there, show up. So much, as Jeffrey said, is made in the editing. I don't think I realized, I didn't think about that as an actor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you do your own editing?
We
No,
work
no.
closely though. We
Okay.
don't do our own editing as far as punching it all in and,
Right.
doing all of that. But Jeffrey, Jeffrey and I have worked like side by side.
Sure.
Like
Sure.
we have pages of notes of, yeah.
So that's the reason why I have Dan editing and Aaron editing for me, because I have no clue, nor do I want to know clue on that. But
And we have a great editor, Nathaniel Beaver, that we've known each other almost 10 years, like 10 years through the Hollywood Fringe Festival.
Oh, cool.
And he had edited many little things for me over the years. And he's a great editor and great to work with. So, we feel one thing that we thought about, and Leslie really talked about when we were starting all this, we need to build a team. I mean, you look at Hollywood and you see the biggest producers, directors, what have you, they work with the same people decade after decade sometimes. So if you collect great people that you mesh well with, you want to keep them,
Yeah, well, and Leslie, you led me into the next question. The actors are very experienced in your short film, Do Over. So tell me a little bit about how the actors that are involved in your production.
How we got lucky enough to get them. I know it was one of those. And again, this is the beauty of getting older, where I just thought, no, let me try to reach that person. Let me try. I had several no's before I got a yes. And how we got Denny Arndt, who plays our male character. And I was having a conversation with my mother. And even though I didn't do much theater as an actor, I grew up going to the theater with my parents. So, and I love the theater. If theater is good, it is the absolute best. It moves me to tears, even to say it. And I was in New York several years ago and had seen Mary Louise Parker in a play called The Sound Inside. And my mother and I were playing this game of what's your favorite book you've read recently? What's your favorite play? And I said, oh, I love The Sound Inside with Mary Louise Parker. And we were trying to cast this character. Oh, and I don't know if Jeffrey, we did have Ed Asner had signed on to work with us on this.
2 weeks before he passed, or like the week or so before he passed.
But I know,
and then passed away.
And yet he gave us such a vote of confidence. It was such a gift. It was like this amazing parting gift. But that again, though, Gary, it was like me, like, okay, who do I know? Who do I know? Oh, my daughter's child friend's mother directed Ed Asner's daughter in a play. Isn't it sort of like business or finance or producing? You're just like, okay, where can it's connecting these dots. And so that's how we were able to reach Ed Asner. And then after that, we were just sort of in this, void of, 3 or 4 months. Who can we get? So I was having that game with my mother in the kitchen. And all of a sudden I thought, wait a minute, who did I see him with? I saw Mary Louise Parker in a play at the Mark Taper in Los Angeles, a two-hander. Who was that actor she was working with? It was called Heisenberg. And I said, oh my gosh. And so I looked him up. He would be perfect. Didn't know Denny. Tracked him down through IMDb Pro, through his agent in New York, got a resounding no. Short films, we know you have no budget. You'll have to fly him first class. He lives in Ashland, Oregon. No. I finally, and again, older, I probably would have run scared in my 20s or 30s. I said, why don't you let him decide? It's a good role. Let him decide. And she said, okay. And she sent him the script and he wanted to talk to me. And so had a conversation. He said he was in, and many conversations. We only had 2 days with the actors before filming, 3-day filming, 2 days of rehearsal, but we had many conversations. And you see why Denny Arndt was nominated for a Tony Award. That makes me, you see why, because he just was, Tony nominated for his work with Mary Louise Parker and Heisenberg. He was just I learned so much, Jeffrey. I think we learned so much from the conversations with him, from working with him, conversations before and on the set.
How cool. And Jeffrey, I know we talked about the female lead and has a wonderful background as well.
Oh yes, Melanie Hutzel. She was on Saturday Night Live in the 90s, early 90s. Her biggest character she was known for was playing Jan Brady. But I met her through other friends in theater. She was involved in the Real Life Brady Bunch, the national touring phenomenon from the early 90s. And I met her through Chicago friends. And seeing her way back in the day when we were kind of hanging in the same circles, and I was seeing a lot of shows they were doing in the LA area. She was not only just hilarious on stage, but then talking with her off stage, she was just so different from her goofy characters and such. And even back then I was like, I want you to you need to do a drama. You need to do something, you know? And so when we, were thinking of the actresses, that she came to mind, and I told Leslie, and Leslie looked her up and says, "Oh, right, I know her." I think the first thing you said was that's Donna. I
got goosebumps. You mentioned her name. We were on the phone. I Googled her. Her image came up, and I was like, "Oh, there she is."
Yeah. How cool is
it's
that?
really great. Again, we haven't been close for years and years, but of course, she's just amazing and lovely, wonderful friend. And I think the first Zoom call we had with her, and she, since SNL, people will recognize her if they've watched any movie. She's been, guest starred on so many TV shows, and even in the movie Bridesmaid, she had a hilarious scene on the tennis courts, and so she's done a lot like that. And on our first meeting, I said something, a Zoom meeting, because I'm in Palm Springs actually, while Leslie's in Alabama, and Melanie was in LA. And
Melanie is now in Tennessee. She said, "I like what you're doing." And she and her husband are like, "We're getting out from under the thumb of LA too." And her husband is a music composer. And so now anyway, they're in Tennessee.
Yeah. But I remember I made the comment, because they were, Leslie and Melanie were meeting each other on our Zoom call. And I said something like, "And Melanie, I know you haven't done much, drama or anything, or opportunity over the years." And Leslie, I think you jumped it right in and says, "Oh, no, Jeffrey, let's not presume to know." And Melanie goes, "Oh, no, Jeffrey's right. In 30 years, I really have not been offered a regular role, something that's non-comedic and goofy."
Sure.
So to be able to give her this opportunity, and what she does with it is just it's a dream come true. I mean, it really is.
Absolutely.
So, all these years later.
So is the short released, and where can I see it?
We are in post-production. We are still, we have picture lock. In fact, but I stepped away from looking at it.
Picture lock, Leslie?
Well, I'm new to this too, Gary. This picture lock is when the images are set, when you've worked with the editor and you have the images set, so then it can be sent to sound and color to adjust the color correction, and to sound to smooth out the sound, the dialogue, the ambient tones. But picture lock is what you get to the product that you send to others, for others to carry on their artistry.
So post-production, you're still finishing the film, as the term.
Yes. But I'm really proud. I have to say, I'm really proud that, we pretty much are doing this in under 3 months, a post turnaround, because so many, over the years, you see so many people with even short films, and they languish 7, 8, 9 months trying to get it finished, and for whatever reason. But Leslie and I were just like, nope, we have deadlines, for festivals, and let's do it. So I'm really happy. I'm really proud of it.
So you're going to release it to festivals. Did I understand that correctly?
We apply to festivals.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm pushing the boundary here. It's going to be in every one of them. You're going to get it in every one of them. So that's great.
I love your thinking. Love your thinking.
So what other projects are you guys working on together? What projects are you guys working on together?
We have several. Jeffrey, can you hear okay? We have several other shorts.
I didn't hear any of that.
Okay.
Oh, what do we have? Okay, come on.
Yeah. What other projects are you guys working on together?
We have, we have the two that we want to do next year. It's another short. just because I realized, and again, I think this is a business thing, it's a numbers game.
Right.
One reason that we didn't want to we were using a festival submission deadline as a deadline for the film to get it through post. What do they say to writers? I don't need more time, I need a deadline. And that applies to so many things. Just give me a deadline. But one reason I think Jeffrey and I wanted that was because of the other things that we have coming up. We have a short that we're going to do in Los Angeles that I wrote called White People Walking Their Dogs. You can imagine, about gentrification, huge issue in so many cities. And I have a bit of the social activism in me as well. That's a part of when I see something that's just not right, that inspires my writing.
Right.
Back to that, your question. And then Jeffrey and we think for our first feature that we're going to do, and again, wearing the producer hat, because it would be so relatively inexpensive to do, we're going to turn the play that Jeffrey directed of mine, A Good Grief. That's going to be the first feature that we do. And it's 4 people in one room, like an adult education center, like a night classes. They're in a room, and they've come there for grief counseling. And realize they're in the wrong room and how they stay and what transpires in this room with these 4 strangers.
Well, I'm totally blown away, Leslie, how you take and develop a story like that. There's no way I could ever think of those things and integrate them together on that. So that's great. Love the theme of that.
Yeah.
And there's just one more I have to say, which is on track, that is in our lineup for another feature. It's called Roberta and the Pink Ice Cream Truck. And Roberta and the Pink Ice Cream Truck. And it was inspired by the West Adams neighborhood in Los Angeles, where I lived for years. I have a little house there. And the pink ice cream truck that goes up and down the streets every day. And this young girl, probably about 10 or 11, who would ride shotgun in the pink ice cream truck. So where do writers get I was just like, who is that? What is her story? Who is she with? And I wrote a story about that young girl, that young woman. Yeah.
So you get to do what you like best, Jeffrey, which is direct these productions, and that's good too. How do you approach directing differently on each? You obviously do on each production, but what differences would you look at between a full length and a short film?
In my mind, there's no difference really. I mean, because for me, it's, as I was saying before, about you're focusing, getting everything focused into when that camera's rolling.
Right. So it's
action,
just expanding the time, isn't it?
Trying to create that, and that's moment to moment, day by day. Whether it's a 19-page script, a 75-page script, or 120-page script. Okay. You have to, be so clear in your mind, especially since you rarely get to shoot things in sequential order, especially on larger projects. You got to break up where you film, but it's just every day. When the camera's rolling, are you creating that world and letting the actors explore and play around to give you enough that in the editing you can build it? So that's my take on it.
Well, good. Yeah. Coming from a non-entertainment background, it's so fascinating to see all the aspects that you guys get to work with. How cool is that? So my last question has to do with describing your future and the future for other generations. How do you see your future going, Jeffrey, and that of future generations?
Every day we wake up and choose to be happy. Despite what's going on in the world.
Okay.
My mom.
Thank you, Francis. That's right.
My mom. There have been times in the past, especially in the past couple of years, when I kind of spun out because of everything that we're going through now. I won't get into it, but politically, I mean, I was talking about this over 10 years ago, with the beginning, 20 years ago, but with the beginning of the Tea Party in W's first term. I'm like, is anyone else seeing where we're going in history, where this is leading? But my mom would tell me, Jeffrey, the world has always been on the edge of disaster. Okay. There's always going to be something. So don't get too worked up. No matter what's going on, every day when we wake up, we can either lament the state of things or we can just exist with them and say, you know what, despite that, I'm going to choose to be happy. So when I look at the future, when I look at mine and Leslie's future, I am very excited because I see a lot for us. And as far as for other generations, what my mom says, make your future, despite whatever's going on out there. Just make sure that you are dedicating your life to finding that joy and making the best of it, and in trying to help other people, whether through storytelling or what have you.
Right. So Leslie, what about you? How do you see your future and the future for like your daughter?
I see my future. Yeah, that's an interesting question. There's a simplicity. There's, and that finding that joy. I love what you said about, if it's not giving me joy, finding a joy in the simplicity of life I love. And I don't think they are, disparate. I love being in nature here in Alabama. I love the trees, the rivers, the creeks. And that to me just fuels and nourishes. I love being able to go into an LA or New York, but that fuels such a creative life to me, is being outside of the cities. As far as to other generations and how they see the future, as Jeffrey, sort of what Jeffrey is saying, it's their choice. It's all in one's perspective. And I see, a cynicism, like a sarcasm and a cynicism and a bitterness and I don't know why, then you will create that. Then that is what you will see.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm hopeful that future generations will realize that they can make their own choices and change the world with themselves. And that's important. I lied on one last question. Jeffrey, you recommended a book to me, I believe.
Jane Fonda is My Life So Far.
Yes.
That's what we were talking about.
And so I actually have the book. I'm getting ready to read it because I've got a 10-hour flight coming up next week. And so to do that, but you were telling me that this has really impacted and helped your life, this book. So could you kind of talk a little bit about that?
I think it came out in 2005. It was her autobiography that she wrote herself, and I love the book because she not only goes through her life, her movie career was really only 15 or 20% of her life.
Right.
I know most people just think of her as this actress, but it was such a small part of her life. And so she talks a little about her career over the decades, but she also talks about her personal growth through each decade, what was going through each decade. Plus she talks about the art of writing. She had never really written before, so she talks a lot about the writing. And then most importantly, she talks about aging. She wrote it, it came out right when she was 60. Yeah. And this is actually, Leslie tagged the name of our company, Third Act Productions, because Jane Fonda talks about that. She says, always in our modern day, people over 60 put them out to pasture. Whereas always, it seems, before in the history of human civilization, elders were respected and revered. They, were in charge of things, because our third act, 60 plus, should be our most productive when we're using all the wisdom and everything that we've learned over our lives. And it's just, it was a great book. It meant a lot to me. And I suggested it to Leslie, and she wrote it and called one day and said, we should call ourselves Third Act Production. I'm like, yeah, that's perfect.
How cool is that? Yeah. I've got the book. I'm looking, I've read maybe a chapter or two, so it's going to be really good to do. But I just wanted to bring that up because it really, really was an excellent book and impacted me just the short time I've read the chapters. Yeah. Well, thank you for so much for being part of our podcast, and your future is so bright. I can't wait to see all the things you're going to do and produce and everything. That'll be so wonderful. So thank you.
Well, no matter the success of them, you will know we are happy. We are doing things that bring us joy.
And
whether it's writing, directing, producing, we are doing things that we love.
Yeah. And it's evident you guys are in your right paths going forward, because the joy is there. So congratulations. Way to
Oh,
go.
Thank you.
thanks so much,
Yeah,
Gary.
yeah,
Thanks for
thank-
having us on.
Thanks for having
You're
us on,
welcome.
yeah.
And I'm very honored to have you as guest. Thank you again.